So guys, before deep diving into other topics, first understand what are the terms you can get related to the Dockers in our coming sessions. So it will be easy to understand. First thing is we mostly talk about the Docker images. So what exactly these Docker images are? So Docker images is like a snapshot, or we can say the executable package that includes everything which need to run a piece of software, including the code, runtime binaries, and the system tools. Once you run this image, then you will get the containers. So the thing is to create containers, you need to run some image. These images can be anything like Python. It can be based on your. So there are many images. We will go through the examples as well after some time. Next thing, you need to understand what is container. We have already talked about container is a running instance of a Docker image in terms. So what exactly the containers here? It's a running instance. That means we can perform the task on this one, right? We can stop, we can start, we can pause. It's like we can perform the task on this running instance. That is our container. Next thing, then what exactly the Docker file is? So the thing is, before building image, we need to have some file. Okay, that will have some instructions. How this instruction will be, like you need to run this one, you need to use this base image, you need to copy this thing while running the containers, and what are the ports, everything, whatever you need to specify in this image, what exactly it will perform to create the container, that instructions we need to define in our Docker file. So Docker file is a text file that contains instructions for building a Docker image. It defines the base image, application code, dependency, and the configuration setting. So Docker. So first we will create the Docker file. Here we will write the instructions in simple language that I'll show you how to write it and what types of instruction it will have. Once we will have this one, we will run the command like docker build. Once we have that run this command, then it will create the Docker image. Once we will run Docker run command, it will run this image and will create container. So it will be like first step is to create Docker file. Next need to create image or build image. On third thing is to run container. Next thing, as I mentioned, we will create the images, but where it will be stored. So it will be stored in a registry. So what exactly the registry is? Registry is a storage system for Docker images. What it will hold? It will have Docker images. So Docker Hub is a public registry where you can find and share Docker images. Private registries can also be set up for internally. If you want private, like you are in a development phase, you just want to run and test, that you can use this private registry. Okay, so we can have two types of private and public. Private is related to yourself or some individual organization, but public is open for all. Next is, then what is repository? Okay, so a repository is a collection of related Docker images with the same name but different tags. What does that mean? And it will allow you to version and organize images for different purposes. Okay, so you are working on an image that will run some Python code. Okay, first time you build it. Okay, the version of this one is V1. You want some upgrade or modify something, next version is V2. Similarly, you work on that one, then next version is V3. So these all images will hold into a repository. Okay, so this is the repository. Next term is tagging. So whatever we are defining here along with the image name, so a tag is a label or version identifier for a Docker image. So with this additional information, or we can say the metadata, these tags will define that one. It's kind of a label. Next thing, Docker daemon. Docker daemon is like a engine, we can say Docker engine, which run in a background, and it manages the Docker containers and images on a host system. So whenever we need to perform these things like building image or uh, like building image, running any image, or anything related to this one, related to Docker, it will be performed by this component, that is Docker engine. So it's kind of a brain of a Docker, we can say. So whenever, now let's understand last term, then we will understand the relationship of this one. Next is Docker client. So what is Docker client? Docker client is a command line interface, as we already seen when we run a command of Docker version. So it's a command line interface that allow users to interact with Docker daemon. So whatever command we will write here in the command line interface, that command line interface is Docker client, but whatever command we are running here, it will connect to this one, Docker daemon. This Docker daemon will run those commands, and or we can say execute those commands to perform some task. So whatever command you will run, it will go through like this way, and it will use API for that. So this is how, and the important terms we are having. We are having different more terms also, but we will, learn about that once we will go through that particular topic. So for the timing, you need to understand what is image, what is container, what is Docker file, what is registry, what is repository, tag, Docker daemon, Docker client, because these are the most common used terms while running or learning Docker. So guys, that's it in this video. I hope you find this video helpful and engaging and help you to learn something new related to